Professor Kimday walked down the empty hallway of New Terra University. His footsteps echoed in the silence. It was late evening, and most students had gone home hours ago. He liked working when the building was quiet. It helped him think. Day taught history to human students. But the history he taught was not the real history. It was the approved version that the alien rulers wanted everyone to know. According to their books, humans had always been weak. They said humans needed the galactic hegemony to survive. They said humans were grateful for alien protection and guidance. Kim Day had taught these lies for 15 years. Every day he stood in front of young faces and repeated the same stories. Humans were naturally inferior. Humans could not think for themselves. Humans were lucky that wise aliens had taken control of their worlds. But lately, something felt wrong. The more he taught these lessons, the more questions filled his mind. Why did the alien rulers work so hard to control what humans learned? Why were certain books banned? Why did security forces watch teachers so closely? Tonight, Kim Day was staying late to organize old files in the basement storage room. University library had been built on top of an older building. Sometimes workers found strange items in the lower levels. Most of these items were sent away for disposal. But Kim Day had been curious about what the aliens considered dangerous enough to destroy. He pushed open the heavy door to the basement. The air smelled old and dusty. Boxes filled the shelves from floor to ceiling. Most contained approved textbooks and teaching materials. But in the far corner, behind stacks of broken furniture, Kim Day noticed something different. A section of the wall looked newer than the rest. The metal panels did not match the others. Kim Day ran his fingers along the edges. One panel was loose. He worked at it with his hands until it came free. Behind the panel was a small room. Kim Day used his phone light to see inside. The space was barely large enough for one person to stand, but it was filled with something amazing. Books. Real books made of paper. Dozens of them sat on crude wooden shelves. Kim Day had never seen books like these. All modern books were digital files, controlled by the government. These old books had covers made of different colors and materials. Some were thick, others thin. Many had strange symbols and words he did not recognize. He picked up the first book his hand touched. The cover was worn and faded, but he could still read the title. The Declaration of Independence. Kim Day had never heard of such a thing. He opened it carefully. The pages were yellow with age, but the words were clear. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Kim Day read the sentence twice. Then he read it again. Equal. The word felt strange in his mind. In his world, aliens ruled and humans served. That was the natural order. But this book spoke of equality as if it were obvious truth. He set the first book aside and picked up another. Common Sense by someone named Thomas Paine. Kim Day opened it and read random passages. The words talked about government and freedom and the rights of ordinary people. They suggested that common people could think and decide things for themselves. A third book caught his attention. Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. This one discussed science and nature and how humans could study the world around them. It described people asking questions and finding answers through careful observation. Kim Day had been taught that only aliens were smart enough for real science. Book after book revealed the same shocking truth. These were human books, written by humans, about human ideas and human achievements. They spoke of art and music and literature created by human minds, described scientific discoveries made by human researchers. He told stories of humans who refused to accept unfair treatment. Kim Day lost track of time. He sat on the dusty floor reading by the light of his phone. Each page revealed more evidence that everything he had been taught was a lie. Humans had not always been servants. They had once been free, had built cities and written poems, and explored space. They had governed themselves and made their own choices. One book made him stop breathing for a moment. It was a collection of photographs showing Earth before the alien conquest. The pictures showed massive cities built by human hands. Humans in strange clothes standing in front of amazing machines. Humans laughing and dancing and embracing each other with joy on their faces. Kim Dae had seen pictures of old Earth and approved textbooks. Those images showed primitive humans living in dirty caves, barely able to survive. But these photographs revealed the truth. Humans had created a beautiful, complex civilization. They had been happy and proud and free, as dawn light began to filter through a small basement window. Kim Dae realized the terrible magnitude of what he had discovered. The galactic hegemony had not rescued humanity from ignorance. It destroyed human civilization and then rewritten history to hide their crime. But why keep these books at all? Why not destroy them completely? Kim Dae studied the hidden room more carefully. Someone had built this space deliberately. Someone had risked everything to preserve these forbidden texts. There was even a note tucked inside one of the books. The note was written in simple words on ordinary paper. For those who come after us, remember what we were. Remember what we can be again. The truth cannot stay hidden forever. Kim Dae felt something awakening inside his chest. It was not fear, though he knew he should be afraid. It was not anger, though he had reason to be furious. It was something he had never experienced before. Hope. He carefully selected 5 of the smaller books and slipped them into his bag. Then he replaced the wall panel and made sure the basement looked undisturbed. As he climbed the stairs back to his office, Kim Dae knew his life had changed forever. At his desk, he opened his computer and began to type his lesson plan for the next day. But instead of the approved curriculum about human weakness and alien wisdom, he found himself thinking about equality and freedom and the power of human imagination. Kim Dae looked at his reflection in the dark computer screen. Tomorrow he would stand in front of his students and teach them lies, just as he had done for 15 years. But now he knew they were lies. And somehow, someway, he was going to find a way to share the truth. The revolution had begun in the mind of one man reading forbidden books in a basement. Would not end there. Kim Dae spent 3 sleepless nights reading the forbidden books. Each page revealed more shocking truths about humanity's hidden past. But knowledge without action felt like torture. He needed to share what he had discovered, but he also knew the danger. Speaking against the hegemony meant imprisonment or worse. On the 4th day, Kim Dae made a decision. He would start small. He would find one person he could trust and see if they were ready to learn the truth. He thought about his colleagues at the university. Most seemed content with their safe, quiet lives. They taught approved lessons and asked no difficult questions. But there was one person who had always seemed different. Lena worked in the engineering department. She had once been a military engineer before taking the teaching job. Sometimes Kim Dae caught her staring out windows with a look of longing. In her eyes, Kim Dae found Lena in her workshop after classes ended. She was repairing an old computer terminal, her hands moving with practiced skill. She looked up when he entered. "Professor Kim, what brings you to my messy corner of the world?" Kim Dae closed the door behind him and checked to make sure they were alone. "Lena, can I ask you something? Do you ever wonder about the old days? Before the hegemony?" Lena set down her tools and studied his face carefully. "That is a dangerous question, Professor." "I know, but I think you might be ready for dangerous questions." Nina was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in a low voice. "I used to design starship engines for the human defense fleet. Did you know that? Before the final surrender, we were working on faster-than-light drives that could have changed everything. The aliens told us our designs were impossible. They said human minds were too simple for such advanced science. But you knew better? I knew my engines would have worked. I had the calculations. I had the prototypes. When the hegemony took control, all my work was destroyed. They said it was for our own good. They said humans should not try to exceed their natural limits." Kim Dae reached into his bag and pulled out one of the forbidden books. It was a technical manual about rocket science written by human engineers decades before the conquest. He placed it on Lena's workbench. Lena stared at the book as if it were made of fire. Once she looked around nervously, then picked it up with shaking hands. She opened it to a random page and began to read. Her eyes grew wide. "Where did you find this?" Kim Dae told her about the hidden room in the basement. He explained what he had learned about humanity's true history. Lena listened without interruption. occasionally nodding as if pieces of a puzzle were falling into place in her mind. "I knew something was wrong," she said finally. "I could feel it in my bones. Humans are not naturally stupid. We're not naturally weak. But I thought I was the only one who felt this way. You are not alone, and I think there might be others." Lena closed the book and held it against her chest. "What do you want to do about it?" "I want to find those others. I want to share these books with people who are ready to see the truth, but we have to be careful." "Very careful," Lena nodded. "I know someone who might be interested. Parkman teaches at the elementary school. She's been asking questions about the history curriculum. Small questions, but the right kind of questions." 2 days later, the three of them met in Lena's workshop after dark. Parkman was younger than the others, probably in her late 20s. She had curious eyes and spoke with quiet intensity. "I have been teaching children for 5 years, Park," Min said. "Every day I tell them that humans are naturally inferior, that we need alien guidance to survive. But when I look at my students, I see intelligence and creativity that contradicts everything in our textbooks." Kim Dae showed her one of the books. It was a collection of children's stories written by human authors. Stories were full of adventure and wonder in young heroes who solve problems through courage and cleverness. "Park." Min read several pages, then looked up with tears in her eyes. "These are beautiful. Why would anyone want to hide such wonderful stories from children?" "Because they show what human children can become when they are allowed to dream," Kim Dae said. The three of them talked for hours that night. They shared their doubts and frustrations. They talked about the fear they had lived with for so long. The fear of asking questions, the fear of thinking forbidden thoughts, fear of being different. But now they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the books. Lena suggested a plan. "We should make copies of the most important books. I can modify a printing machine to work without network connections. The authorities monitor all digital copying, but old-fashioned printing might escape their notice." Parkman had another idea. "I know other teachers who have been asking quiet questions. I could approach them carefully, one at a time, who is ready to learn." Kim Dae felt hope growing stronger in his chest. "We must be very careful about who we trust. But you are right. There have to be others who feel the way we do." Over the following weeks, their small group began to grow. Lena found a former maintenance worker named Cho Jin who had always wondered why humans were forbidden from repairing certain types of machines. Parkman carefully approached a fellow teacher named Song Yi who had been caught reading unauthorized poetry. Each knew a person brought their own skills and connections. Cho Jin knew the building maintenance schedules and could help them meet in safe locations. Song Yi had friends among the artists and writers who gathered in coffee shops to share carefully neutral creative work. They developed simple signals and codes. A book left in a certain position meant it was safe to talk. A casual comment about the weather indicated whether someone was being watched by security forces. Most importantly, they began copying the forbidden books. Lena's modified printer worked perfectly. Soon they had multiple copies of the most revealing texts. Took responsibility for carefully sharing the books. With 1 or 2 trusted individuals, the books spread slowly but steadily. A maintenance worker read about human engineering achievements and began to understand why he was forbidden from learning about advanced systems. A nurse discovered that humans had once been skilled doctors and researchers. An artist found evidence of human creativity that had been erased from approved history. Each person who read the books experienced they began to call the awakening. It was the moment when all the lies fell away and the truth became clear. Humans had not always been servants. They had been free, creative, intelligent beings who had built amazing things and dreamed impossible dreams. But with awakening came anger, and with anger came the desire for change. Kim Dae realized that what had started as one man's curiosity was becoming something much larger. It was becoming a movement, a quiet revolution that spread through whispered conversations and secretly shared books the authorities had not noticed yet, but they would soon. And when they did, everything would change. 6 months had passed since Kim Dae first discovered the hidden books. The underground network had grown to include nearly 50 people across New Terra. Teachers, workers, engineers, and artists met in secret to share forbidden knowledge. But Kim Dae knew they needed to reach more people. Much more people. The idea came to him while watching the evening news broadcast. Every day at the same time, alien authorities transmitted approved information to all human colonies. The broadcasts used old human communication, networks that had been built decades before the conquest. Lee Na was examining the communication equipment when Kim Dae approached her with his plan. "The old broadcasting system," Kim Dae said. "Can you access it?" Lee Na looked puzzled. "The government controls all broadcasts. They have security codes and monitoring systems. But the basic network was built by humans, right? Using human technology?" "Yes, but..." Lena stopped talking as she understood what he was suggesting. "You want to hijack the broadcasts?" "Not hijacked. Just borrow them for a few minutes. Long enough to share some truth." Lena studied the technical manuals that were part of their growing collection of forbidden books. These books contained detailed information about human communication. Technology. Information that had been hidden from people like her who were supposed to maintain the systems. "It might be possible," she said slowly. "The aliens never changed the basic architecture. They just added control layers on top. If I could bypass those layers..." It took 3 weeks of careful preparation. Lena worked with Chojin to access maintenance tunnels where the old communication cables ran. They found connection points that were not monitored by current security systems. Meanwhile, Kim Dae prepared his first message. He had read all the forbidden books multiple times now. He had studied the words of human leaders and thinkers and dreamers. He understood what needed to be said. The first broadcast lasted only 2 minutes. It interrupted the regular evening news on a Tuesday night. Instead of the usual alien announcer, humans across New Terra heard a different voice. A human voice. Speaking words they had never heard before. "Ah, my fellow humans," Kim Dae said into the microphone. "You have been told that you are weak. You have been told that you are stupid. You have been told that you need others to think for you. But I have discovered something amazing. These things are not true." The broadcast ended before security forces could trace its source. But those 2 minutes changed everything. People across the colony began asking questions. Who was the mysterious voice? What did he mean about humans being lied to? Small groups gathered in homes and workplaces to discuss what they had heard. Captain Choi Soo of the Colonial Security Force was assigned to investigate the illegal broadcast. She was one of the few humans who held a position of authority under the hegemony. She had earned her rank through loyalty and obedience. She believed completely in the wisdom of alien rule. Choi Soo began her investigation by reviewing security, footage, and communication logs. She interviewed broadcasting technicians and searched for signs of equipment tampering. She was thorough and professional. She was also determined to catch the criminal who was spreading dangerous ideas. Kim Dae made his second broadcast 1 week later. This time he spoke for 5 minutes before the signal was cut off. He quoted from the Declaration of Independence and spoke about the idea that all people were created equal. He read a passage from a science book that described how humans had once sent machines to other planets. "You have been told that such things are impossible," Kim Dae said, "but your own ancestors did these things. They explored space and built amazing machines and wrote beautiful books. The capacity for greatness lives inside each of you." More people began to listen. More people began to ask questions. Workers started making small suggestions about improving their jobs instead of blindly following orders. Students asked teachers about topics that were not in approved textbooks. The alien authorities became worried. Overlord Vexari called an emergency meeting of all colonial administrators. "Human productivity is declining," Vexari announced. "They are becoming distracted and disobedient. This cannot continue." The Overlord ordered increased security measures. More surveillance cameras were installed. Communication networks were monitored more closely. Humans caught asking inappropriate questions were sent for re-education, but the broadcasts continued. Kim Dae spoke every few days, always from different locations, always managing to stay ahead of the security forces. His message began to change. from simply sharing information to inspiring action. Do not accept what you are told without question, he said during his 7th broadcast. Look around you. Use your own eyes and your own mind. You will see that humans are capable of amazing things when they are allowed to try. People began calling him the Voice, gathered in secret to listen to his broadcasts. He shared his words with friends and family members. They started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were more than what they had been told. Choi Soo was getting frustrated. Every time she thought she was close to catching the Voice, he would vanish like smoke. Her superiors were pressuring her to solve the case quickly. Her own career was in danger if she failed. Then came the broadcast that changed Choi Soo's life. Kim Dae spoke about courage. He read from a book about human soldiers who had fought against impossible odds to protect their families and homes. He talked about ordinary people who had stood up against unfair treatment, even when it was dangerous. Courage is not the absence of fear, Kim Dae said, quoting one of the forbidden books. Courage is doing what is right even when you are afraid. Each of you has this courage inside you. You just need to remember how to use it. Choi Soo was alone in her office when she heard these words. She had been working late, studying communication logs and security reports. But as she listened to the Voice, something strange happened. She began to think about her own life. She had always been proud of her position in the security force. She had worked hard to earn the trust of her alien supervisors. She had never questioned orders or wondered about alternatives. But now she found herself thinking about the human soldiers the Voice had described. What if humans had once been brave? What if they had once fought for their own freedom instead of serving others? For the first time in her adult life, Captain Choi Soo began to doubt everything she had been taught. That doubt would soon grow into something much more dangerous. The Voice was no longer just sharing information. He was awakening something that had been sleeping in human hearts for generations. He was reminding people of what they could be. The revolution was spreading. Faster than anyone had imagined. Captain Choi Soo stared at the security report on her desk. 3 more colonies had reported illegal broadcasts. The Voice was no longer limited to New Terra. Somehow, the mysterious speaker was reaching humans across multiple star systems. But that was not the most troubling part of the report. The real problem was what happened after people heard the broadcasts. Human workers were starting to innovate. They were suggesting improvements to factory processes that their alien supervisors had never considered. They were asking to learn about equipment they had previously been forbidden to touch. Most shocking of all, some of these suggestions actually worked. On Mining Colony 7, a human maintenance worker named Yoon-ho had proposed a new method for extracting rare metals, as the aliens had dismissed his idea as impossible. But when desperate quotas forced them to try it, production increased by 30% on Agricultural Station 12. A human botanist named Kim So had developed a way to grow crops in previously unusable soil. The technique was based on principles from an old earth science textbook that had somehow survived the purges. Even on New Terra, changes were visible everywhere. Parkman had started teaching her students to ask questions instead of just memorizing facts. Her classroom had become more lively and creative than any alien inspector had ever seen. Choi Soo realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. Humans were not just listening to the Voice. They were acting on his message. They were beginning to think and create and solve problems like the free people described in the forbidden broadcasts. The alien authorities were starting to panic. Overlord Vexeri called another emergency meeting. This time, military commanders from across the sector attended. The situation is becoming critical, Vexeri announced. Human efficiency should be declining due to their disobedience. Instead, it is increasing. They are developing capabilities we did not know they possessed. General Kethver of the Imperial Fleet studied the reports with growing concern. These innovations they are creating, some are based on scientific principles we have not mastered ourselves. That is impossible, Vexeri replied. Humans are mentally inferior. They cannot exceed our technological achievements. Then explain this. Kethver displayed a holographic image of a new engine design created by Lee Na and her team. This faster-than-light drive is more efficient than anything in our fleet. The humans developed it in 6 weeks using principles from their forbidden textbooks. The room fell silent. For 3,000 years, the galactic hegemony had maintained control. Through technological superiority, if humans could match or exceed alien science, the entire foundation of the empire was threatened. Meanwhile, Kim Dae continued his broadcasts from hidden locations across New Terra. His message had evolved from sharing forbidden knowledge to inspiring coordinated action. "You are not alone," he said during his 20th broadcast. "Across the stars, your fellow humans are awakening to the truth. They are remembering what we once were and imagining what we can become again." The underground network had grown beyond anything Kim Dae had imagined. Copies of the forbidden books were circulating on dozens of worlds. Secret groups met to discuss human history and potential. Most importantly, people were beginning to work together in ways that had been impossible under alien rule. Choi Su found herself caught between two worlds. Her duty required her to stop the illegal broadcasts and arrest the voice. But every night, she found herself listening to his words and feeling something awakening in her own heart. The breaking point came when she received orders to raid Park Min's school. Intelligence reports suggested that the teacher was distributing forbidden materials to children. Choi Su was ordered to arrest Park Min and confiscate any illegal books. But when Choi Su arrived at the school, she saw something that changed her forever. Park Min's students were not the quiet, obedient children that alien education was supposed to produce. They were engaged and curious and excited about learning. They asked intelligent questions and worked together to solve problems. One little girl approached Choi Su with a drawing she had made, showed humans and aliens working together as equals, exploring space and building beautiful cities among the stars. "My teacher says humans used to build amazing things," the girl said. "She says we can build amazing things again if we remember how to dream." Choi Su looked at the innocent hope in the child's eyes and realized she could not destroy it. Instead of arresting Park Min, she quietly left the school. That night, she sent a coded message to the voice using security channels she was supposed to be monitoring. "I want to help," the message said simply. Kim Dae could hardly believe it when he received Choi Su's message. The security captain wanted to join their cause? It could be a trap, but something about the message felt genuine. He decided to take the risk. They met in an abandoned warehouse outside the main city. Choi Su came alone, as Kim Dae had requested. She was nervous but determined. "I have been hunting you for months," she said. "But I realize now that you are not a criminal. You're trying to free us from lies we have believed for too long." Kim Dae studied her carefully. "What changed your mind?" "Your broadcasts." "The children." "At the school?" "The reports I have been reading about human innovations across the colonies. I cannot ignore the evidence anymore. We are more than what we have been told." Choi Su had brought something valuable. As a security officer, she had access to communication networks across multiple star systems. She could help coordinate the growing resistance movement. "There are others like me," she said, "humans in positions of authority who are starting to question what we have been taught. If we can reach them, we can accelerate the awakening." Within weeks, the revolution entered a new phase. Instead of just sharing forbidden knowledge, the network began actively organizing. Human workers on different worlds started coordinating their innovations. Scientists shared research that had been developed in secret. Artists created works that celebrated human achievement and potential. The alien authorities tried to crack down, but they faced an impossible situation. Humans were becoming more productive and creative, not less, resting the most innovative. Workers would damage the very systems the empire depended on. More importantly, the revolution was spreading faster than it could be stopped. Every person who experienced the awakening became a teacher for others. Every shared book created new believers. Every successful innovation proved that humans were capable of greatness. On New Terra, Kim Dae prepared for his most important broadcast yet. He had received messages from 47 different star systems. The underground network now included thousands of people. The time had come to move beyond secret meetings and hidden knowledge. The time had come to openly challenge the lies that had kept humanity in chains for 3,000 years. Tomorrow, Kim Dae told his closest allies, we stop hiding. Tomorrow, we tell the truth to everyone who is ready to hear it. The revolution was about to become visible to the entire galaxy. The final broadcast was different from all the others. This time, Kim Dae did not hide. He stood in the main square of New Terra's capital city, surrounded by thousands of humans who had come to hear him speak. Choi Soo and her security forces formed a protective circle, but they were not there to arrest anyone. They were there to guard the revolution. "My fellow humans," Kim Dae began, his voice carrying across the square and being transmitted to every human colony in the sector. "For too long, we have lived as slaves to a lie. We have been told we are weak, stupid, and inferior. But today, we reclaim the truth about who we are." The crowd listened in complete silence. On dozens of worlds, humans gathered around communication devices to hear words that had been forbidden for generations. "We are the children of explorers, who crossed oceans and reached for the stars," Kim Dae continued. "We are the descendants of inventors who built machines that could think, and artists who created beauty from nothing. We are the inheritors of philosophers who dared to ask the greatest questions, and scientists who found the answers." As he spoke, something remarkable began happening across the human colonies. The innovations that had been developing in secret for months suddenly accelerated. It was as if removing the final barriers of fear and shame had unleashed human creativity in ways no one had expected. On Mining Colony 7, Yunho and his team completed construction of a new type of spacecraft. The ship used principles from the forbidden engineering books, combined with innovations they had developed themselves. When they tested it, the ship achieved speeds that surpassed anything in the alien fleet. On Agricultural Station 12, Kim So had not just improved crop production. She had developed an entirely new approach to terraforming that could make dead worlds livable in years instead of centuries. Teams of human scientists were already planning expeditions to uninhabited systems. Most significantly, Lena had finished her work on the faster-than-light communication system. For the first time since the conquest, humans could talk to each other across the galaxy without alien monitoring or control. The implications were staggering. Within hours of Kim Dae's final broadcast, human colonies were coordinating their efforts on a scale that had been impossible for 3,000 years. Overlord Vexeri watched these developments with growing horror. The Empire had depended on human labor and creativity for millennia, but always under strict alien control. Now humans were working together independently, and their combined efforts were producing results that threatened the technological superiority of the hegemony itself. "How is this possible?" Vexeri demanded during an emergency council meeting. "Humans were conquered because they were inferior. How can they suddenly match our achievements?" General Kethfer had been studying human innovations for weeks. His analysis painted a disturbing picture. "They were never inferior," he said quietly. "We made them appear inferior by suppressing their education and limiting their opportunities. But we also made ourselves dependent on their work. No. They are free to innovate. They are advancing faster than we are." The truth was even worse than Kethfer realized. The galactic hegemony had become stagnant during its long rule. Controlling subject species had been easier than pushing the boundaries of science and exploration. Alien technology had barely advanced in 1,000 years. But humans, given access to their own history and the freedom to build on it, were making breakthroughs at an incredible pace. They were not just catching up to their former masters, they were surpassing them. The revolution reached its climax, not through warfare, but through transformation. Humans did not attack alien installations or demand immediate independence. Instead, they simply began acting as if they were already free. Human workers started making decisions about their own projects without waiting for alien approval. Human scientists shared their research openly with colleagues on other worlds. Human artists created works that celebrated their species' achievements and potential. Most powerfully, human children began learning real history instead of the approved lies. Parkman and teachers like her across the galaxy started using the forbidden books as textbooks. They taught their students about human accomplishments and encouraged them to dream of even greater achievements. Within 6 months, The character of human civilization had changed completely. The quiet, obedient servants that the aliens had ruled for millennia were gone. In their place were confident, creative, ambitious people who saw the stars as their natural home. The economic effects were immediate and devastating for the hegemony. Human productivity increased dramatically, but humans were no longer content to have their work benefit only their alien rulers. They began trading with each other, forming their own companies, developing their own resources. More importantly, humans began leaving. The new spacecraft developed by human engineers made it possible to reach unexplored regions of the galaxy. Entire families and communities started packing up and heading for unclaimed worlds, where they could build societies based on the ideals described in the forbidden books. The aliens found themselves in an impossible situation. They could not stop the human exodus without destroying the workforce their empire depended on. But they also could not allow humans to establish independent colonies that might become rivals or threats. Some alien commanders suggested using military force to reassert control, but General Kethfer had studied the new human technologies carefully. "Their ships are faster than ours," he reported. "Their weapons are more advanced. Their industrial capacity is growing exponentially. A military confrontation would likely result in our defeat, not theirs." The end came not with a declaration of war, but with a simple announcement. Kim Dae, now recognized as the unofficial leader of the human independence movement, sent a message to Overlord Vexeri and the Hegemony Council. "We are leaving," the message said. "Not in anger, but in hope. We go to build the civilization our ancestors dreamed of and our children deserve. You are welcome to join us as equals, but you can no longer rule us as subjects." And they did leave. Colony after colony, world after world. Humans packed their belongings and headed for the unexplored regions beyond the Empire's borders. Took with them the knowledge they had rediscovered and the dreams they had reclaimed. The galactic hegemony, dependent on human innovation and labor for thousands of years, began to crumble. Without human workers to maintain their systems and human scientists to solve their problems, the aliens found themselves falling behind technologically and economically. Some alien worlds attempted to follow the human example, rediscovering their own suppressed histories and capabilities. Others collapsed into civil war as different factions fought over the remains of imperial power. But the humans were no longer interested in conquest or revenge. They were too busy exploring, building, and creating to waste time on old conflicts. Kim Dae lived to see the first human cities built in the new territories. They were beautiful places where art and science flourished together, where children learned to think for themselves, and where the forbidden books were displayed proudly in public libraries. On his 70th birthday, Kim Dae gave one final speech to a gathering of humans from across the galaxy. "We have proved that ideas are more powerful than armies," he said. "We have shown that truth cannot be suppressed forever. Most importantly, we have remembered that freedom is not something that can be given or taken away. It is something that lives in the human heart and mind." As he spoke, a young girl in the audience raised her hand. She was holding one of the original forbidden books that Kim Dae had found in the basement all those years ago. "Professor Kim," she asked, "what should we do if people try to take our freedom away again?" Kim Dae smiled. "Keep reading," he said. "Keep thinking. Keep dreaming. And never forget that the greatest revolutions begin with a single person brave enough to seek the truth." The girl nodded and held the book closer. Around her, thousands of humans looked up at the stars they would soon explore, carrying with them the knowledge that had set them free and the wisdom to stay free forever. The Empire had fallen, but humanity had risen. This time, nothing would stop them from reaching their true potential among the stars.